Well, first of all, Corey, thank you for inviting me to this forum. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be in this space and be working in coalition with Compassion Works for All, because as you know, it has a special place in my heart, the organization. For those who don't know, my name is Kaleem Nazeem. I'm a formerly incarcerated individual. I spent 28 years and 11 months of incarceration. I was incarcerated when I was 17 years old, was given a life without sentence in Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1990, I was sentenced, and I uh, did 28 years and 11 months of incarceration and was released in August the 10th, 2018. Upon my release, I got involved with a lot of prison reform advocacy work, working with organizations like Compassion Works for All, Decarcerate, which I'm presently uh, a paid employee of Decarcerate. I also collaborate with the Campaign for the Fair Sentences of Youth out of Washington, D.C. And I also, do a lot of advocacy work and community activism with the Poor People's Campaign of Arkansas. So, I just try, since my release, I just try to be active, in my community and, doing my part in the work that need to be done. I also have recently, last July, graduated from Arkansas State University at Newport with a associate's degree in energy technology, uh, uh, and I'm very proud of that. So, in a nutshell, that's a brief history of what got me in this space that we're in today. So,
Yeah. And recently named or joined our board of directors here at Compassion.
oh yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine that you forgot about that one. We'll let that slide. We are super excited to have you as part of our leadership here and helping to guide the direction of our organization. Well, very good. Well, I'd like to jump into it because I know you've got a lot to share. So can you just take us through a little bit about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, kind of a brief explanation of what that is and then how that translates?
I really kind of want to do this a little bit different than I did it at the law school, because I feel like it's so much information and we don't have nothing but an hour worth of time. So it's like I feel like we missed a lot of questions from my audience.
Oh, yeah.
So if we could, if you're all right with this here, as I go through my PowerPoint, if there's any questions, you guys raise your hand, and then we can kind of pause for a minute and address them questions that you may have. But I really, I can't really take full credit of this theory, which it is Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. But when I was incarcerated, I used to always kind of figure out a way of what's going on with me, what's going on in my environment, what I'm seeing. I'm really a big people's watcher. I try to always watch myself as far as, understanding what's going on with me or how I'm feeling, and I self-reflection. So a lot of this came through my own personal self-reflection. And I had to ask myself, when I first was introduced to the theory, Maslow's hierarchy of theory, and it was talking about, all our needs, from our physical need, our safety needs, and things of that nature. There, I couldn't help but ask myself, when a person comes to prison, I think it's a fair assessment to say that a certain part of that individual is broken and was broken for them to have committed whatever crime it was that led them to prison. So when a person comes to prison and a certain part of them is broken, I just feel that it's the administration part of their job to help fix that brokenness. So when we kind of juxtapose Maslow's hierarchy of needs against the conditions of prison, I kind of always ask myself, and used to always ponder the thought: are the system trying to fix the individuals, or are they just perpetuating the brokenness in in the individuals who they have incarcerated. So as I pondered these thoughts when I was incarcerated, I came up, you know, with what I'm going to be presenting today. So that's basically the origin of this presentation. When I was incarcerated, I wrote a I guess you can say an article on it, but then since I've been out, I kind of expanded on the article. So, okay. Well, I didn't already explain to you guys who I was and, you know, what my background was. So I also failed to mention that also this PowerPoint also has included in it in Seligman's theory of depression, which promotes a controlled hopelessness. And if we get to it, I also like to visit that also. But as I said, I come from a position where I was formerly incarcerated, so I speak from first person experience position of having served 28 years and 11 months of incarceration. And I believe that recidivism, it starts not after a person is released from prison, but when they first is introduced into prison. And I can't help but reflect on my personal experience when I was first received into prison, and I feel like that was one of the most vulnerablest times of the most receptive that I could have ever been to change when I enter prison. And I feel that everyone who enter prison, when they first get there in a new environment, they are more susceptible receiving new information or changing from their previous behavior than any other time when they are in prison. Because first of all, you're in a new environment, you're scared, you're afraid, and you're looking to change your condition. In the condition that you're in, you are very you are very receptive to change. So I think that a person's whether they're gonna recidivate into crime or whether they're gonna be changed, their conditions, they're gonna change the way they think about life is predicated on how they're treated in prison, but more so when they first come to prison.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because so many programs focus on people who are at the other end of that, and
Exactly.
you only qualify for program. I'm probably getting ahead of it, but
No,
that's you know, just like I mentioned this morning, I was over at the jail, and that's most of the people who are in those classes and in those programs are about to re-enter. Their time is up.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're having to unlearn all kinds of stuff from what has been piled on them in their time in prison.
And that's a very valid point, Corey, that a lot of times when a person has done 10, 15, 20 years of imprisonment, they have learned so many negative behaviors because they're not able to get in different type of self-help programs because of the conditions of the prison system, as far as, you know, the administrative side of the prison system, saying those who with long-term sentences aren't really qualified or deemed qualified for change. So that's one of the fallacies within our prison system. We say that we want individuals to come out whole and healthy, but when the individual actively tries to get in self-help programs, they are denied the opportunity until they're like a year or 36 months of short parole eligibility. And then these programs are basically forced on them to prolong their sentence. So they enter the program with a sense of discontentment. So we'll talk more about that on in the presentation. But I can't help but ask this question here, and I always ask the question: is our penal system broken, or is it operating exactly like it was designed to operate? This question is a question of opinion. However, it also, on how you answer the question depends on which side of the spectrum you fall on, whether you fall on the tough on crime thing or you fall on the reform part of it. But according to Arkansas Department of Correction reported on findings in the 2013, and some of these numbers has been changed. So it's not exactly a 58% over 3 years for those released on parole. It's a 58% recidivism risk rate and 24.39% for those who discharged their sentence. Males had a higher recidivism rate of 57.65%, and females had a rate of 48.21%. Now, as I said, some of these numbers have changed because this is a 2013 number. But we're going to get it in this part of the segment. We're going to get a state of Arkansas the benefit of the doubt. We're going to cut all these numbers in half and say that the recidivism rate is 27% or 28% overall, and for the males, we're going to say it's 25%, and for the females, we're going to say it's 24%. But when we look at these numbers, and that's giving them a big grace period, if we just do it like that, Darryl, which we know that they haven't since 2013 cut the recidivism rate in half, so from the numbers of 2013. So if we're giving them this grace, we're gonna still say that if we're running a company and putting out a product that has a 25 to 30% failure rate, what would be our process of fixing that? Will we allow that company to continue operating with impunity, or will we stop production of whatever product we're putting out and say, well, we need to fix this here? Well, that is exactly what is happening with our penal system in Arkansas. Is putting out a bad product because the individuals who are getting out, there are constantly recidivists and coming back to prison and committing more crimes in society. And I attribute a lot of the recidivism to the way individuals are treated inside of the system. Because a lot of individuals who come with low-level offenses come to prison with low-level offenses like battery, well, not battery, but breaking and entering, petty thefts and things of that nature. They come out more harsher than they went in because they wasn't given the proper tools to educate themselves. So I think this is something that we need to look at. I'll now ask the audience to use basically common sense when you, and I ask a lot of rhetorical questions. And the thing is, if you're sick, and having a problem, an ailment, who would you go to? Me personally, I go to a doctor. If I'm having legal problems that I need some legal representation, I wouldn't hire a mechanic to give me legal representation. I go to an attorney. And the attorney that you're seeing on my screen now is Brian Stevenson's. And he was really the architecture of the juvenile deal, and this would allow me to get free. In 2012, the United States Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional to give a juvenile a mandatory life without sentence. And he argued this here before the Supreme Court, and they ruled in his favor. And basically, it ultimately set off where all throughout the United States, I think it was over 2,000 individuals who had been sentenced at juvenile and given life without parole sentence was eligible to go back for resentencing here. So when I went back for my resentencing hearing, I received a 40-year sentence. This ultimately is what led me to my freedom. To the meat of our discussion. First of all, the meat of this discussion would be the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for anyone, this is basic psychology 101. And for anyone who has ever took a psychology course, most likely you'll be familiar with the Maslow's theories. I'm gonna just kind of glaze over right quick. The the story that I heard about Maslow is that he was trying to figure out what makes a complete individual. So he came up with this theory, which first of all is our physical needs, which constitutes our food, shelter, and water. And the second level of this hierarchy of need is our safety need, the ability, to feel safe in our environment. Then the third is our communal needs. And if we just really kind of pay closely attention to this theory, the higher we go up on this hierarchy of need, the more people we interact with, and the more communal the needs become. The third set of needs is our community needs, the ability to feel a part of, being a part of a community. Then the next level is our self-esteem needs, how we feel about ourselves and different things of that nature, that how we, our self-dignity, our respect. And the last level of need is the self-actualization, is our hopes and our dreams. And before we go any further, I like to say this here, because I think this is very important. When a person is incarcerated, their most prevalent hope and dream is to be free. I know when I was incarcerated, I had a life without sentence, and I really couldn't think past being free, being reintroduced into society. And I wasn't thinking about what job I have, what job I'm gonna get. I couldn't think about my future, going to college and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that we take for granted in the way of our dreams kind of was suppressed because of my incarceration. So my most prevalent dream when I was incarcerated was to be free. So, however, as I said, our most fundamental or our basic physical need consists of our food, shelter, and water. And without physical nourishment, we would cease to exist. When incarcerated, this need is pretty much provided for the individual, even though the food, shelter, and water is substandard. Now, we must think about human personalities. When a person is basically denied the ability to take care of self, which is our food, shelter, and our most fundamental needs. When an individual is denied the ability to take care of itself, this stifles the person's ability to provide for themselves. There's a proverb that goes, if you feed a man, tomorrow he will be hungry. A person cannot be whole and healthy until they learn to provide for themselves. When we are in prison, the food that is given to the individual is so substandard that really it borderlines inhumane. They have a food that they serve individuals called gruel in the Arkansas Department of Correction. And what this is gruel is the guys who are on behavior control. This is individuals who they have in solitary, this is the conditions of the individuals who are in solitary confinement. They really don't have anything but a blanket and a mat. And they put these individuals in cells, and they take all the leftover food from the previous day, cook it in a big cauldron until it's boiled into a mush, put a cornmeal in it, cook it in a flat pan, like a cornbread pan, cook it until it's hard, cut it up in sections, and this is what they feed to the individuals. who are on behavior control. Other foods, I can remember a time when I was working in the kitchen, and some spoiled meat came in. And what they'll do with the meat, instead of just throwing it away because it's spoiled, they'll cook that down, boil it, you know what I'm saying, boil the meat down till it's cooked or whatever. And you can still smell the spoiledness on the meat. And then they'll make gravy. The supervisors will make the guys make gravy and pour it on top of the meat. And this is what they feed to the general population. It's things like this here that highlights my point of the substandardness of the food that is being provided for the individuals. Then when we talk about the shelter, just imagine living in a 6x9 cell for 23 hours, 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then for that other hour that they allow you out of your cell, you're basically going to a bullpen that is no, it's, I go as far as say a dog kennel, you know, and that is what you're given for the hour that you're out of this 6x9 cell, having nothing. And when I say nothing, I'm talking about some of the bare essentials that we in the free world take for granted. They're just like when you're in solitary confinement, you can't have a toothbrush, you can't have a comb, you can't have a brush of TV reading material. And no matter where you at in prison, when we're talking about shelter, there's no sense of privacy. When you're using the restroom, whether it's one or two, you're doing it in front of an audience. When you're taking a shower, you're doing it in front of an audience. So there's no sense of privacy when we're talking about the shelter that is provided for individuals who are incarcerated. And the last thing on the physical needs that Maslow outlined in his theory was the water. The water in prison systems, and I have never been at a unit where the water was good. Either the water was hard well water, or it had, like on the picture, it had a lot of rust contamination in it. When I was at the Brickage unit, the water was so bad that it was an outbreak of staph infection where the Department of Health had to get involved to make them basically bring the water up to standard. And then the water was so for a lack of word, I'm gonna say hard, that when you take a shower, you can still feel the film on you when you get out of the shower. And then the water had a real reeking odor to it also, where basically you were forced to, in a sense, shut a part of your brain down so you can force yourself to drink the water and eat the food at this particular unit. And I contribute that to, you know, the survival of the human spirit, because even though when I first got there, it took me about 2 weeks before I was able to really drink the water. But after, you know, those 2 weeks, I started drinking the water. It's like, I describe it like you going in a room that smells, but after a while you become nose blind to it. And that's how, you know, guys had to adjust, you know, to the conditions of that particular institution. But also we must consider that not only did we have to bathe in this type of water, we also had, our food was cooked in it, our laundry was did in it. And in other units like the Tucker Maximum Security Unit, the water was so bad that guys would get new uniforms, just like there, when you get a new uniform, it'll be about as white as this shirt that I have on now. But if you send it off to get washed, it'll come back as brown as the water you see on this picture. So it was a lot of days that I asked myself, if the water is doing this to the clothes, what is it doing to our insides? So, you know, it's these are the things that constitutes the food, shelter, and water when you're incarcerated. And I kind of attribute the lack of development in this category as one of the prime reasons that there's a high recidivism rate. In the book, The Prince, I once read this book called The Prince by Kaleem Machiavelli, and he said that in the book, he said generosity breeds enemies. And I agreed to that within the context of this discussion, because healthy adults are independent and self-sufficient by nature. If this is negated willingly or unwillingly, it causes a sense of discontentment toward the person or the administration, because people do not take pleasure in having their responsibilities as adults denied. And through this process of incarceration, this inadvertently happens. This is where the strong discontentment comes from when we hear guys say things like, "Don't treat me like a child, I'm a grown man," and et cetera, et cetera. These are only cries to be validated as individuals and to be recognized as men and women. And when these needs are not used for a long period of time, they become suppressed. So when people return to the free world, having not been required to take care of their basic needs, simple tasks can be hard for some and seem foreign and alien to others. We have a term that we call it institutionalization, and that's what it really is, which can result in a relapse into bad behavior when individuals get out. I'm gonna tell you a personal story that I had with my wife, and it was pertaining to clothing. When I was released from incarceration and I started buying my own clothes, dressing myself, where when I woke up this morning, I had an option of what I would put on today. Because in prison, you don't have that option. You know exactly what you're gonna wear each day. You're gonna wear a white uniform. So when I was released from prison and kind of built my wardrobe up, I can be going to the store and I'm talking about it looked like I'm fit to go to church or something. And my wife, she asked me, well, baby, where you going? I said, well, I'm fit to go to the store. So she well, why you dressing up like that there? So I had to really think about it. And this was one of the side effects of my prison experience. And this is what I came to the conclusion. I came to the conclusion, I told her that I have been so fabrically oppressed for so long that it just feels good to be able to have the choice and have the option to wear what I want to wear. So as a free man today, I exercise that option to the fullest. Oh, that's one of my self-reflections, and that's one of the things that I'm aware of as far as me being reintroduced into society. And that's something small, but in a way it's something big also, because it's like I'm recapturing that part of me that was suppressed for so long. So I just want to share that little story now before we go into our safety needs.
And
our safety needs are.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you there. But
go ahead.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it, especially your looking sharp, just as a way of expressing your own freedom. I think that's fantastic. I did just want to see if anybody had any comments or questions, especially regarding the food, water, shelter part of the hierarchy of needs. And I know Zoom can be a little bit clunky.
Hello.
Jump in
yes,
there.
Sir.
Hey, Kaleem. Thank you for sharing your story, my brother. This is Damien.
Hey, how you doing, Damien?
I'm doing great. Hey, man, you touched on a big part when you was talking about the food and the in the prison system,
Mhm.
because I remember working in the kitchen and I would see the boxes say not for human consumption on the boxes, and
Exactly.
we would say something to the administration, and they would just simply ignore it or laugh it off or just play it off. But I can definitely contest to the level of quality of food that was given to the prisoners, man. And I think that plays a big part in the health system, in prison with inmates also.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree with you 100%. And there's a lot of things, that during the shortness of time, we're not going to be able to touch on. But as you said, a lot of the products that come into the prison system that they're feeding to guys who are incarcerated has those type of labels on them. And a lot of times when we look at the menus, you can go on the website and they'll say they feeding this here and that day, Salisbury steaks, chicken Alfredo, and all that there. But you'll think society will think that they feed the guys who are incarcerated healthy and wholesome meals, but these be box meals, what we call box meals. Processed. I can't even call it processed food, man, but it's dehydrated. Uh, it's not real. So,
I think at the jail they always just call it like meat product, like soy-based meat product.
yeah,
it's just kind of a weird shaded, like gray.
Yeah,
meat. I don't even know what category it falls into.
Yeah, I can't put it in a category. It's not real. So if there's not any more questions, I'm gonna continue with the safety needs.
Let's do it.
Our safety needs are our needs to feel that the world is organized and predictable. It is critical that people feel safe in their environment. Safety promotes an optimistic attitude toward life, which is conducive to positive growth and development. When looking at prison and asking the question, is there a sense of safety? You would only have to look from a physical perspective to answer this question. Do a sheep feel safe surrounded by lions, and do a bird feel safe confined in a cage, or do they feel fearful and oppressed? When we place a person in a person or animal in a hostile environment, they can never feel safe. The opposite of safety is chaos. Prison is a very chaotic environment, and it forces people to indoctrinate chaotic rules for survival. In the free world, we feel safe because institutions that support our society, the police, a hospital, laws, even rules of traffic, we feel safe driving down the street because we have stop signs, because we know that people are observing the rules of the rule of law in our society when we're on the highways and things of that nature there. So we have a sense of safety because it's a structured environment. This is far from truth when you're in prison. I can give a lot of examples, where I personally didn't feel safe in my environment. And one of the first rules of things that happen to you when you are introduced into prison, you're physically stripped and you're psychologically stripped of your identity. One of the first things that they do to you when you enter prison is they make you get naked in front of a lot of individuals. They strip you of all your clothes. I'm talking about your drawers and your underwear and everything. And you're required to stand in a room full of, it all depends on how many individuals are going through the intake process with you, but it could be as many as 25 or 30 people. And you're really kind of dehumanized to the process where you're stripped naked. You're told to, lift your genitals up, bend over, spread your buttocks and all that there. And you're doing this here in front of 25 other individuals. It's a very dehumanizing experience, and then they put this lie on you, like throw some lie on you, and then make you take a shower, and then it's a very dehumanizing process. And then you're assigned to ADC number, and they tell you in the intake process that every time you say your name, if an officer asks you what's your ADC number, you got to be able to quote it on spot, or you're going to receive some type of punishment if you're not able to, say, well, my name is Kaleem. What's your ADC number? 94911. And if you're not able, to do this, then you receive a punishment. Now, this is part of the resocialization to take you out of who you are as an individual that the administration put you through. Then you have this. Then you have things that goes on in the prison system, where basically, I did like 6 months in solitary confinement for having a watch. Then I remember one time I did 30 days in solitary confinement for saying no. Then I remember another time that I was basically took in the back of the field and beat down because I said I didn't want to pick cotton. So when you have these type of experiences, there is no sense of safety, and this is not even talking about, I haven't even begun to talk about some of the things that happen with individuals who are both incarcerated, some of the incarceration on incarceration crimes that we see that happen within the prison system, because we can use our imagination for that. There, I just want to point out a lot of the things that the administration do. I have seen officers, because they're bored, guys who are in solitary confinement, already in a depressive state, just because they're bored and want to rattle the cages, they'll go through the vent system, spraying mace, so they can get guys hollering about, what I'm saying, they discontent for that there. So it's things like that there, that promotes this unsafe environment where even if you do have a problem. I remember one time that when I first was incarcerated, I think I had been incarcerated for a year at this time. So this young guy they had took his commissary. So he called himself doing the right thing and going to the captain's office and reporting it, trying to get it back. So it just so happened I was in the hallway, and the captain basically told him, did you receive anything from someone? And he like, yeah, they gave me a 2-for-1. Then he said, well, we told you when you first came in, don't take anything for anyone, get on up out of here. So a lot of times, a lot of the predatory behavior that goes on in prison is co-signed through the actions of the administration. So there's no sense of safety in the prison system. And then a lot of times the attitudes that are considered antisocial in society are promoted in prison. Empathy, concern, trust, and love are emotions that are taboo and have limited space to grow in prison. On a personal note, I remember the first loss that I received in prison was my nephew. Well, not my nephew, but my cousin. He was a younger cousin of mine, and he was about 9 years old at the time. I think I had been incarcerated for about 2 years. And he had got hit by a drunk driver, and ultimately he passed away. And when I found out about what happened, I was on my rack, and I was grieving because of the loss. And one of my homeboys, my friends from the world, he came to me like, man, you got to suck that up, man. It ain't no crying in here. you gotta suck that up, man, because that's dangerous. So, I had to suppress, that emotion, those feelings, because those emotions wasn't allowed in prison. To express emotions outwardly is considered a sign of weakness. However, when you're masquerading like like hatred, vengeance, manipulation, selfishness, are the emotions that are encouraged and given free rein to grow and breathe within the prison system. It's encouraged by guys who are incarcerated, and it's also encouraged by the officers and administration, because that's what they promote. So combine this with the double standards that the administration promotes, and you have complete unstableness. There can never be a sense of safety safety when you have this type of environment. And when a person is forced to live in these type of conditions, a lot of times they become callous, to a lot of things. So I just wanted to share that. The next need is the third set of needs is our community need. And really, after all I have told you thus far, it's hard to believe that there could exist a community in such a state of chaos. When developing and operating from a healthy perspective, we have healthy and positive relationships with our peers. But when you are incarcerated, you find yourself surrounded by negative influences. Now, mind you, nothing is 100%. Nothing is 100%. What word that I'm looking for? Well, we're just gonna say nothing is 100%, and that is also true for prison. Even though the conditions of prison are so oppressive, there's no sense of safety. There are still individuals within the prison system trying to niche out an environment that promotes healthy relationships, even in the midst of chaos. But the general concept of what I'm presenting today is that the majority of the actions of the administration are negative. They're just like when I was incarcerated, the first program per se that I was allowed to attend was a program that was brought into the Tucker Maximum Security Unit by Miss Anna Cox, and what we used to call, it was a meditation group. But it was more than a meditation group, because we were really truly introduced into who we were. It was a safe space within a chaotic environment. And I man, just to be real with you, I feel like Miss Anna was one of the bravest people in the world, because she used to sit in the room with guys who have been, I think all of us at the time had been convicted of either capital murder or multiple murders, rapes, and different things of that nature thereof. And she used to sit in the room with about 10 or 15 of us, and we closed the door, and we was in a safe space, and we was allowed to explore ourselves and, kind of, basically do a lot of self-reflection and being reintroduced to who we truly were, and not the crimes that we have had done. And that allowed each and every one of us in that group to grow, because we kind of develop a family, like a camaraderie between us. So when I say that there's no community within the prison system, that's not in a totality, but overall, the conditions of prison and a lot of the mentality that individuals take on isn't conducive to a communal atmosphere. And then this is the crazy part about the prison system. You would think that the administration will want individuals who are incarcerated to gravitate toward the positivity, but they really don't, because a lot of the programs that have formerly been introduced in the past in the prison system have been canceled out because it was changing individuals' mentalities. As far as I can remember, some 20 years ago, they had a program in the prison system called transitional analysis. And it basically was kind of teaching individuals how to respond to adverse situations and things of that nature there. But when the guys who were incarcerated started using the information to basically tone down the officers, they said that the guys who were incarcerated was being too manipulative with the information and took the program took them out of the prison system. Then they had another program called the JCs. It was like I never was a JCs, but they taught the principles of parliamentary procedures and things of that nature there. And when the guys started doing different projects, raising money, buying weight sets, buying things, doing food programs for like July the 4th and things of that nature there. And it was beneficial, built the morale of the guys who were incarcerated. They also took that program out of the institution. So a lot of times, it's like, even if you want to change, a lot of the times the administration have the mentality that, well, if you want to change, you're going to change into what we want you to be, but you're not going to change into what you want to be. So these are some of the barriers that you see within the prison system when it comes to instituting change within the individual's communal atmosphere, because a lot of times when you try to congregate in a community type atmosphere and do something positive, you can possibly receive a disciplinary, and they call this congregating, and they have a rule violation for it. So these are some of the things that are fallacies within our prison system. And to me, it promotes recidivism due to the fact if you don't change the condition of a person and make them more sociable to individuals, even when you're incarcerated, because I have a strong belief system. Anything that you want to do when you get out, you're going to start doing it in that present moment. And that's what when I start coming into myself, that's what I started doing. Instead of, a lot of people would say this here, well, this is what I'm gonna do when I get out. And I always ask individuals this, and I think it was a pertinent question. Can you prove it? Whatever you tell me you're gonna do when you get out, can you prove it now? Because if you're saying you're gonna do something, you start that process in that very moment that you say you're gonna do it. You don't wait, And a lot of times when we're talking about community, when I was in prison, I found myself in a very tight-knit community where I didn't allow myself to be around negative influences, even though they were around me. I allowed myself to be of like-minded people, and I always said to myself that I'm gonna develop what I call avatars, and that's people that I felt that I will want to be in their presence when I got free. So I, used to always extend my hand out into the world and develop my community that I was going to be a part of when I got free. But that's the communal side of it.
Yeah.
The next,
Kaleem, I think, a few months ago, we interviewed some people from the Center for Healthy Minds up at the University of Wisconsin, and they've got some really good research that they're doing with mindfulness-based programs in prisons and with first responders. And one of their big platforms is the need for community versus isolation, and
exactly.
not just the social aspect, but the physical aspect. And one of the things that they said that I especially found alarming was that a sense of isolation. Even if you're not physically isolated from people, but if you believe that you're isolated and that you're alone, that can have just as much of a negative impact as chronic smoking and chronic obesity on your physical overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking that was pretty shocking. And sure enough, there's a lot of research and scientific evidence to back that up. That again, it's not just if you are physically alone, but if you believe yourself to be isolated, that starts to have really bad effects on you. And when our prison systems perpetuate that, not just detain you and put you in a place of isolation, but tell you that you are not even allowed to have a sense of community, that starts to take those really negative effects on you. And then why would you start searching that out? Why would you start finding value in it when for years you're being told this is wrong, you're not allowed to, you get in trouble when you do it? Just like that's doing a lot of damage on a human level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this brings us, that's a good segue into the next set of needs, which is our esteem needs or our self-esteem needs. I stated earlier, the need for people to be able to govern themselves affect their self-worth. Our achievements in the way of helping our neighbors, solving family problems, and participating in community activities all paint a picture of who we are as people. This not only garners the respect of others, but also promotes self-respect. I always said that a lot of times we think of ourselves as what we do most of the time. That's how I think of myself, what I do most of the time. I don't classify my self-worth based on my mistakes. I classify my self-worth about what I do most of the time. And I know most of the time I'm a positive person. I'm not perfect, but I'm a positive person most of the time. Now, I know that for a fair fact, because when I came home and was able to do some things, I felt better about myself. It's just like when I was able to vote, I felt better about myself as an individual when I walked in the voters booth and was able to cast my ballot, ballot for a certain candidate. I felt that I was actually a whole part of society by doing that. When I advocate for others and guys who are incarcerated, I feel a self-worth about that there. And then one in particular thing that happened since I've been out, it was a flood in our neighborhood every time it rains. The easements, overflowed in a couple of houses in our neighborhood got flooded out. So the community, we all came together and, we called City Hall and made complaints about it, signed petitions and everything. And the City Hall, they came out and addressed the community. And I felt good that I was a part of that. And ultimately what they did is they came out and fixed the easement. So the last couple times it rained, then no houses in the community got flooded out. So I feel good about that now. So because I know that this was a small win, not just for the community, but a small win for me. When a person is incarcerated, though, I shared that story to paint it against what individuals who are incarcerated are faced with. When we talk about the promotion or the deterioration of our self-image, no matter how small or big the win is, a win is a win and a loss is a loss. So just imagine, and make no mistakes about this, sir. When a person is incarcerated, whether it is said or not, we call individuals inmates and prisoners and things of that nature. There we put different titles on them. But the title that we shy away from as a society or don't want to use or, try to put it on the back burner is slave. individuals who are incarcerated in the Arkansas Department of Corrections on a daily basis is slaves. Whether you want to admit it or not, anytime you work with individuals and do not give them monetary compensation for their work, and if they do not work, you will physically discipline them, then you know what I'm saying? To me, that is a marked definition of slavery. Now, the spirit individual once asked me when I was incarcerated, and we was having a philosophical conversation, and he asked me the question, one of my friends asked me the question, well, I'm gonna ask you this question here, Nazeem. Do you have the spirit of a free man or the spirit of a slave? And when I just really thought about the question, your conditions of confinement can be the conditions of slavery, but that don't make you you as an individual as a slave. It don't mean that you're a slave because your mentality hasn't been captured, only your body. So when I answered the question, I told him I got the spirit of a free man. And there's a big difference. And I feel the spirit of a free man is you always strive to be better than you is in whatever your current position is. And you know that you are more than your present worth, and so forth and so forth. So a lot of times people who are in prison, and I was one of them, the light, it takes a light to really come on in your head to understand your conditions opposed to who you are as an individual. And one of the things that happened to me when I was incarcerated, it came in the form of one of our meditation group. Miss Anna had did a meditation that was like she put a lot of positive affirmations in a hat, and we went around the room and each one of us picked out one. And then, you know, after we meditated about what we picked out, it was like we went around the room and kind of discussed what we had picked. And I never forget this, Harold. My affirmation was, you are greatness. And for about 3 years, that one sheet of paper, I kept it in my ID tag. And every time I got depressed of my situation, I read that piece of paper and it reminded me that I was greatness. Not in a braggadocious type way, but that I was worth something. And this was very important. And mindfulness, as Corey said about mindfulness programs, a lot of times it be those little jewels that individuals really need to be reintroduced into who they are as individuals, and not who they are as convicted felons and things of that nature there. So a lot of times when we talk about our self-esteem, we got to understand that the Arkansas Department of Correction operates on the style tactics. And this affects, you know what I'm saying, an individual's self-worth. So our next things that we'll discuss, and I'm kind of going fast now because I know we've been crunched for time. It's the last category if our is our self-actualization or our hopes and our dreams. And when we think about our hopes and our dreams, as I highlighted in the beginning of this presentation, that for a long time, until I seen a light of me getting out of prison in 2012, for a long time, my most prevalent hope and dream was to get free, to try to figure out, you know, how to get out of this situation. And a lot of times, I dare to say this here, but I'm gonna say it anyway. A lot of times when a person is in an oppressive environment, you can't think past getting out of that environment, because really, and we're not gonna be able to get to this part of it, the brain operates in a fight, flight, or freeze type mentality. But when you just think about it, when a person has a life without sentence in prison or a long-term sentence in prison, his brain is forced to operate in a fight, flight, or freeze mentality for a long period of time. And this is abnormal to the brain. So in highlighting all this here, and I'm gonna bring it to a close, even though I have more information, but I see I've been speaking for 55 minutes now. In highlighting all of this here, I make the argument. I make the argument that the administration, the Arkansas Department of Correction, and other penal systems throughout the United States know exactly what they are doing to the individuals that they have housed. If I can look at different theories like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Salomon theory when he did experiments on the dogs, put one in a floor where it shocks the dog, and the dog don't have no right of escape, and he get conditioned to a condition of hopelessness. I think the same things are happening with the individuals who are incarcerated in the Arkansas Department of Correction who have long-term sentences. They are being conditioned in a condition of hopelessness. I'm gonna stop right there. Look like Damien has his hand up. Go ahead, Damien.
No. I just had questions when you finish. You can go ahead and finish, bro.
Okay. Yeah, but it was an experiment that was did in the 60s by I think I'm pronouncing this name right, Sagleman. And basically what happened was it's a condition called condition helplessness. And what he did with the experiment, he used 2 sets of dogs. Really, it was a control set too, where it really was 3. But in one cage, he put a set of dogs where they had a route of escape. Only thing they had to do is jump over a barrier. And he shocked the floor, and these set of dogs, they jumped over the barrier to get to where the floor is one electric wasn't shocking them. In the next set cage, this set of dogs, they didn't have a route of escape, and they shocked the floor. And through a course of a time, when they got conditioned to receiving the shocks, instead of trying to move, they just laid on the floor and received the punishment. So they took the second set of dogs and put them in the first cage where there was escape route and shocked the floor, and still the dogs didn't jump on the other side to the safety because they had become conditioned to adverse environment. A lot of times when we look at recidivism, that is what's happening to individuals. They have been conditioned to a certain way of life of receiving a certain set of punishments, where even when our option is provided for them to escape this punishment, they don't jump on the other side. I say that the administration promotes this here because if you put a person in the penitentiary with a life without sentence or a long-term sentence and don't give them no opportunity to learn and grow and develop into healthy and whole individuals, then you effectively promote a condition of hopelessness within that individual. So in my theory, as far as using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when a person is first introduced into the prison system, a part of them is broken. So if you're not healthy, if you're not actively promoting rebuilding this individual's pyramid, then you're a part of the problem that we see in our society. And with that, Darryl, I appreciate you guys for allowing me to share this information and being a part of this discussion.